G'day folks, and welcome to the Triumph Bar and Brewery and to the Wednesday Word of Wisdom. Well, it's the beginning of what I think is a really important week in the life of this country that we mark every year. Today is the day when we remember the 1960s landmark referendum to change our constitution to say that Indigenous people weren't animals or plant life, they were actually people deserving the same dignity and rights and equality as the rest of the people who inhabit this country, all of which came later on via invasion and colonization, migration and immigration. Those of us who came later have been the great beneficiaries of the great technological advances of Western civilization that have been accumulating over the last 2,000 years. We haven't shared them very well, or the health benefits or the outcomes that come from those. We've got a long way to go for our Indigenous brothers and sisters to know complete equality in terms of health, housing, and education outcomes in this country and employment. The end of this week will mark what is called Mabo Day. That's in memory of the landmark court decision late last century where the High Court finally ruled that the Constitution got it wrong when it said the land was empty when the whitefellas showed up, and that it finally acknowledged that Indigenous folks had inhabited this land for a very long time, that there were hundreds of nations here, and that they actually had some claim on the land. And now, since then, our governments have been rightly working towards a sharing of custody of the land, and finally in the last few years we've been acknowledging more and more that the original custodians of this land, this great continent on which we all live and share. Reconciliation Week is important too in the fact that quite often it surrounds a day that is significant in the life of the church, one that we've celebrated for 2,000 years, Pentecost Sunday, the day when the Spirit came in power on God's church and sent them out into all the world with the message of Jesus and his life that reconciled humanity to God. Reconciliation is the core business of the church and therefore the core business of humanity. We've all in some ways got a damaged relationship with our dad in heaven. And in some ways, we've all got damaged relationships with one another. Some people we get along really well with, others not so much. We hate these words in our lingo, sorry and forgive. They're like swear words. In fact, we're more comfortable with what we call swear words than we are with the words sorry and forgive. But if this world isn't going to end in a screaming mess, we've got to get to work on this reconciliation business. This week focuses on the reconciliation between the Indigenous Australians and those who are the beneficiaries of invasion. But the whole world needs to work on reconciliation. And here it is summed up beautifully in Paul's second letter to his mates in Corinth, a church which was a screaming mess. He says there, Jesus died for all so that those who live might live no longer for themselves, but for him who died and was raised for them. From now on, therefore, we regard no one from a human point of view, even though we once knew the King from a human point of view. We know him no longer in that way. So if anyone is in the King, there is the new creation. Everything old has passed away. See, everything has become new. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through the King and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in the King, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting the message of reconciliation to us. So we are ambassadors for the King, since God is making his appeal through us. We entreat you on behalf of the King, be reconciled to God. Well, friends, if there's a relationship you got to sort out, the clock's ticking down. The kilometres ahead of you are shorter than the ones behind. No time like today to sort out some relationships and be reconciled, and especially if it's your relationship with your dad in heaven. But pray for our Indigenous brothers and sisters this week. And if you have an opportunity, be reconciled. Catch you again soon for another word of wisdom. And before that, I'll see you on Sunday. Cheers.